This homeless man who couldn't even afford to eat, but he used his entire savings to buy cards, just because he found a diary. There was no treasure map in it, just a little girl's thoughts. He read the first entry. The little girl said her mom died. She left this book behind to keep track of her life every day. Turn to the next page. The font changed to English. He couldn't read it. He had to go to the store to buy a card. As he paid, a little girl thought he smelled, so he puts a coin on the card. He asked the lady to help him pay. Then he walked out of the store alone. His name was Willie. He was poor and slept in a cardboard box. The neighborhood watchman lent him a blanket. At night, he'd spread all his cards out on the floor. He read his diary against them. The little girl said he was afraid of thunder, and so was he. And then a storm started to fall. Mighty hid in a cardboard box. The next day he wrote a letter in the blank pages of his diary. He wanted to be pen pals with the little girl, tell her about his life. When he was finished, he folded the letter into an airplane and threw it into the distance. One night, two young men came into the neighborhood looking for a good time. They offered $50 for a boxer, and they let two bums fight each other. The money goes to whoever wins. Mighty came along for the ride. He was attacked by a black guy. Willie took him down in a couple of tries. Willie looked at the money in his hand. He had enough money for a full meal, but he took the money to a hotel. He got a room. He hadn't bathed in a long time. The water was full of dirt, and he slept on the floor for the rest of the night, because he wasn't used to a bed anymore. The next day, he met a handicapped man. Willie asked the handicapped man if he could read English. If so, I'll help you push your wheelchair. The handicapped man promised Willie. He was a veteran. He lost his legs in the Iraq War. He wanted to sell his medals for money. He didn't realize that the owner was only willing to give him $15. The veteran was angry because he felt humiliated, and Mighty started to blend in with the neighborhood. It was close to New Year's. At night, people on the street said Happy New Year to each other, and Willie was sitting alone on a rooftop, with a little girl's diary by his side. Willie found a piece of cardboard. He wrote War Hero on it. He gave it to the veteran. He got a lot out of that day. On this day, the young man came looking for another fight. His power continued. He knocked him down with a few punches. The young man was sitting in his car, looking pleased with himself when he was giving Willie the money. Suddenly he said Willie was his friend. Willie looked at him without blinking. That night, the veteran continued to read Willie's diary. For a whole week, no one spoke to her. She was at home to pay her respects to her dead mom. A drunken uncle. He knocked over the candlestick. The house was on fire. By the end, the old soldier couldn't read anymore. He told Willie that he had killed a girl in the war, but he felt guilty for years. He didn't feel worthy of being Willie's friend. Willie spoke up to comfort him. It's not your fault. You had no choice at the time. A few days later, at a black boxing match, a black man took advantage of the chaos and hit the young man with a frying pan. Willie went up to the black man and gave him a lesson. He didn't realize that he was going to get himself killed. Willie hid in a box with his diary. After this incident, Willie wrote more and more letters. Passing by a pawn shop, Willie saw the old soldier's medal. He ransomed it. That night, he saw the old soldier sleeping across the street. He wanted to give him a blanket, but when he got closer, he realized the veteran was dead. A few days later, the neighborhood watchman approached Willie. He told him to stop fighting with the guys in the neighborhood. Willie argued that they were friends. The other guy laughed when he heard that. He was a rich kid. How could they consider you a friend? It was only then that Willie realized he was just a tool for other people's amusement, hurting others for the sake of money. Willie felt that he didn't deserve to be friends with the little girl. That night, the young man brought a group of rich kids to watch the fights. He raised the price to $100 per match. At that moment, a skinny old man stepped forward because he was too hungry. The young man approached Willie and asked him to fight. Willie agreed, but when he faced the old man, he didn't throw a single punch, and that made the youngsters very upset. He pulled out his diary and threatened Willie, but Willie never moved. The moment the diary fell, Willie jumped on him, but he couldn't save him. Instead, he burned his hand. In the hospital, he was talking about the diary. His voice carried through the microphone to the corridors of the hospital. Then a girl came out. She leaned over the door and peeked at Willie after being discharged from the hospital. Willie, sitting on the curb with his eyes lost in thought. The neighborhood watchman drove by and threw him another shirt. That night he pulled over a car full of teenagers. He took a sprayer and told them to kill each other, or he'd just send them away. The kids got into a fight, and as he watched, he laughed heartily. So much for friendship. Mighty still begged on the side of the road. One day, a little girl crossed the street and approached Willie. She had burn marks on her face. It was the girl from the hospital, and the real owner of the diary. They looked at each other and hugged. They hugged each other tightly. At this moment, two lonely people finally found their home.